All right. Welcome, everybody, to this interview for mission-driven mastermind leaders. Today's topic is effortless referrals and partnerships for your mastermind group. And today we have a very special guest that has been a huge part of my journey in, probably around 13, 14 years of entrepreneurship. And we're going to first share a little bit about how we got connected. Uh, Yanik is known for creating incredible experiences that people love to refer to their friends and family and business colleagues. And Yanik has generated over $20 million through referrals alone. And before we get into the structure for today, first let's check in with Yanik. How are you doing today? And
Hey,
welcome aboard.
Sebastian. Yeah, good to see you.
All right. So for today, I'd first like to hear about your mission, your vision, and how you got into your approach to referrals and partnerships that are collaborative, that are win-win-win. And then we'll go into a bit of your method, and then we'll go into a summary at the end. And yeah, with that being said, would you like to share a bit about how did your mission, your vision come alive for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the 20 million in referrals, and that was, directly as a result of you asking, what did you do to grow Maverick, or how did it happen? And so we went back and kind of just analyzed, because we've never really done any marketing or very little outreach. It's all through relationships, all through partnerships, and referrals. And I'm like, well, pretty much everything that we've done has been via that way. So you're like, well, that's about $20 million. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And so that's where that number came from. Where I think about my mission, and the referral approach is, the mission has been for the last 10 years or so to light 1,000 suns who can each light another 1,000 suns. And I look at that as, what you're doing with mission driven masterminds. Like, these are community leaders and leverage nodes and so forth, and thinking about who are the suns that you're lighting, which then have these ripples of impact. So I've been using that now as the new ROI, the ripples of impact. And I really love that.
Mm.
And so that's really been, the way that I look at things is like, all right, how do you take whatever your knowledge is, your expertise, and then how do you leverage it and multiply it, so then to share it with others who can then share it with others. And kind of like one candle can light another candle, and it never loses its light. And that's really the way that you can consider it.
Yeah, absolutely. So much for us to dive into there. And so for a little bit of context, for everybody who's new to Yanik, you've been the founder of Maverick 1000, which is a mastermind community of seven, eight-figure, nine-figure entrepreneurs that are impact-driven, impact-focused, and also happen to go on a lot of awesome adventures together. And so, yeah, we'll just go ahead.
Yeah, that's been about 15 years in the making. That really came from, so I started in the digital marketing space in 2000. So it's been a while back then. And that was, that was where my first relationships and initial sort of relationship capital was built. And then I help people take their own information and knowledge and start selling it and putting it online. And then about 15 years ago, I just asked a simple question, which is, am I happy? Would I be happy doing what I'm doing 10 years from now? And the answer was no. And that's where Maverick was born, in that intersection of growth, impact, and fun. So how do you grow yourself? This evolutionary transformative growth, and how do you grow your business? How do you make a difference in the world? So the impact, individually, but then also collectively, using our brain power and resources. And then how do we have some fun in the process? So growth, impact, and fun. And that's what these experiences have really done. And then, as a byproduct of putting on remarkable experiences, you get people talking about you in referrals. But most people believe that if you just do good work, great work, whatever it is, you're going to automatically get referrals. And yes, you will in some cases, but I believe that there's some certain ways that you can kind of nudge it and make it even more strategic, to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I believe is so powerful about your approach is everybody knows the power of referrals. Everybody knows referrals are fantastic. You might even know the stat that referrals convert 3 to 5 times higher than any other marketing channel, higher than ads, higher than all those different things that we can do. They convert 3 to 5 times higher. Everybody pretty much understands that. The issue, though, is how to have consistency with it, how to have, you know, more referrals than just one off here and there. And that's really what your approach takes that focus on.
Yeah, and I remember, so I came way back. So way background is I used to work with my dad in a medical equipment sales and service company, and that was our family business. And so I was in charge of marketing because my dad came over from Russia when I was 3 years old, and so English is not his first language, so he let me basically be in charge of all the marketing and sales.
Mm,
And I started learning direct response when I was about 17 years old and copywriting. And it was really interesting. Like one of the first referral lessons I ever got was, and I would never do this today, but it was just interesting. We were selling X-ray film, and I put out a little offer for a polo shirt with our company logo on it, right? Like it's not even that exciting, and it said you get a free polo shirt if you refer someone for X-ray film, and we would get referral customers from that way, and it was just like really interesting just by asking in a way that was heard. People would share referrals. And yeah, you're right. Like they converted better, they were better customers, they would stay longer, they would buy more, all the things that you want from great customers, because I always say great people know other great people.
mm, absolutely. So I'm excited to get into the method, and two things stand out to me when I think of you, when I think of your approach, is one, impact over transactions. And you're the author of Evolved Enterprise, and which is really, I remember reading it, I think it was around 10 or 11 years ago, and that was like forefront of like, hey, business can be transformational, it can be impact driven. And of course, now everybody understands, that's how it goes. But it was like cutting edge back then. Um, so
Yeah,
there's,
well, I still think
yeah,
there's room for more and more companies to think that way, but it is becoming more mainstream. It's becoming a bigger part of business. It's almost like becoming the table stakes for the game, which is great. Like I want that to happen.
yeah,
And I highly recommend, like, the book is great. It's really how to go from a transactional company to a transformational company to even a transcending company, and how that adding that impact layer creates a better reason for customers to want to buy, for your team members to be involved with what you're doing. It's to get better partners on board. Like it really works for everything.
absolutely. So when I think of you, I think of the impact driven, so like the Evolved Enterprise, and then I think of the fun. Because usually, business can get so serious and get so in the strategy and the technique and just serious business. And what I really love about your approach, your method is like, hey, let's lighten up a little bit. Let's still have the technique, and the focus and strategy. Yes, 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 but let's have the fun. And then that's part of the magic that people love so much that ends up creating the referrals.
Yeah, a little bit of purposeful fun, purposeful play.
Exactly, exactly. So great. Going into the method now, do you think we should share the card?
Yeah, let's show the cards. I think that the card's a great example of the perfect question that you want to be asking as well.
Right. Okay. So this is a snippet from a slide here that was part of a training program. So pay attention to really just the card.
Yeah. So how can this be a wonderful win-win-win? And I even think you can extend it even more, win-win-win-win-win. But you know, and it's like it's funny. I love creativity. I love creating, and most people think that you only want a blank canvas, but when you actually have constraints, the creativity works even better. And so for me, the constraint is always how can this be a wonderful win-win-win for everyone involved? And some people have heard that before, like it's win-win or no deal or whatever it is. But I think that you can really make it a win for literally everyone, right? So as you're thinking about um, whatever you're doing, like how is it going to be a win for the direct people that you're involved with? How is it a win for the world? How is it a win for maybe the community that you're serving? How is it a win for obviously your business? But there's a lot of other stakeholders you can be looking at, and it really can be a win all across the board. Um, so the question that I love to ask, and I love questions, right? Because your questions really dictate your answers. The question is, who has even more to gain than I do by this succeeding? So whatever your product, services, whatever you're selling. So in this case, the mastermind group, like who has even more to gain by maybe referring someone into my group, or who has even more to gain by by being a part of this and then introducing us to somebody else. So there's some, you can have some creative ways that you think about it. And but if you sit with that question, things start bubbling up. So let's just take, for example, I'll just make this up totally on the fly, Sebastian, is like, let's say your group is well, I'll take a semi-real world example actually. Let's say we have one of our Maverick members, she also works with you, Naya, who works in the creative real estate space, right? So she's got a mastermind group now that she started with you, and she helps real estate investors think about creatively investing and what are they doing. Now, if I was going to use that concept of who has even more to gain than I do, I might be considering, is there, like, who else is involved in those transactions when they happen? Is it the mortgage company? Is it the and I'm not, a real estate expert, but there's probably five, six, eight, 10 other companies or service providers, the real estate attorney, like, who else is involved in that process that wants to see more transactions happen because it's going to increase their business. So, in that case, how do we enlist them to become partners and and providers in some way, and maybe elevating them within our group, providing them an opportunity to share something, maybe also providing a opportunity for them to refer that makes them look good. And it might not even be money. This is one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about, is like, it doesn't always have to be like, we don't have to default to commissions, being just money. So it's like, what else do they want? I've done things before for referral opportunities, like within Maverick, where we did uh, something in Times Square. We gave away a billboard on Times Square for the top referral partners, and it was really cool because they never would have bought a Times Square billboard for themselves. But it's something really unique, and it gets people kind of excited and thinking about things. We've also done, not everyone's going to have this opportunity, but we do an annual trip to Necker Island with Richard Branson, and so we have sometimes given away like a 3-night stay on Necker Island for the most referrals. So, that's something that really got people excited. But there's other, there's unique experiential things that you can do to get people excited. So I mean, there's so many ways of activating the referrals when you start proactively thinking about it. And if we stay with that one example of the service providers, imagine you host, let's say, a dinner or even a virtual event. Like, you could do so many things. Even if it was a virtual event and you brought them together, they're going to have business for each other because they're complementary. And then you've provided value for them, and then you basically kind of get them excited about what you're doing within your group, and you just say, okay, well, I would love some help, filling this with the right people that can also provide you with even more services. Would you be open to doing XYZ? And maybe every person that you refer gets $1,000 off or $3,000 off the group or something like that. So it makes them look like a hero, because most of the times, if it's service professionals like that, they might not be able to accept a commission, especially attorneys. For sure they can't. So you want to think about what else can you do to make it more interesting for them and make them look good. So again, what's a win-win-win? Or, is it even that, go back to the impact side, is there a charity opportunity where for each person that you brought in, is there a charity contribution would do to your favorite charity or something like that? So again, you just insert some creativity into it, and but also thinking about what's going to be a win for them is one of the ways that I think about it.
Absolutely. And I have an example of this working in the world.
Yeah.
And because I feel like this approach is innovative, it's unique. And I feel like 50, 100 years from now, collaborations like this will be more commonplace, just like how your book was leading the curve. But for right now, it's fairly new. So I feel like examples help bring it home, if I can speak. So yeah, I really ran with this concept, this concept of, yeah, putting together a dream team of who has complementary services that can support the same ideal client. Because,
Hmm.
I didn't want to have all the answers all the time. And in our talks, what formed is this idea of like, oh, everybody has a puzzle piece. Everybody has a specific expertise, and that helps that client. And what ended up happening is like, oh, we're great referral partners for each other naturally because we have, we're serving the same client, shared mission, vision, values. And so I feel like that's a practical example that's been very helpful for me with what you're saying is, yeah, instead of looking like, oh, I need to have all the answers or it's just my way, it's just like, what's the ecosystem that the ideal client needs and how to collaborate with those people.
Right. And so what you were able to do is build relationships with, I think, 12, 13 people or so, right?
15, 16, yeah,
Yeah, okay,
counting.
so 15, 16. And that's a whole lot easier than building relationships with 500 or 1,000 people. And those 15, 16 each have a piece of the puzzle. So it might be branding, it might be authoring books, it might be, whatever the case is that for your purpose-driven mastermind clients and members. And then so, again, like you said, they each can refer back to each other, and they may or may not do that already. Like, so they may not know each other. I'm one of those, dream team members. We don't really have anything specific to sell necessarily, aside from the concept of the Thousand Sons. But I enjoy meeting new people that share that, like you said, the mission, the values, the vision, and I know that all of them do as well, because now you've just handed them referral opportunities, and you're not even saying, hey, I'm going to get in between, and I'm going to, if you guys refer to each other, I'm going to take a piece. It's really just to help the entire ecosystem, and ultimately, people want to help those that are providing value to them. So it's pretty simple, but not in a, I think where some people get a little mixed up in this process is like they think about reciprocation as a quid pro quo, and it's like, all right, well, I'm going to do this for you, so now you're going to have to do this for me. And psychologically, there's a great book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, that came out a long time ago. I love that book. I probably read it, I don't know, 8 or 9 times, and absolutely love it. And one of the concepts that he talked about, he's a professor, I think at ASU or something like that, really close to you.
Yeah.
And he talked about reciprocation, and it was just natural. And the experiment that always jumped out for me was, I don't think they have these things anymore, these copy machines where people would stand in line at the library to go make copies or whatever. But it was an experiment where there's like a long line of people trying to go get copies done, and he would have an experimenter try and butt and get in front of other people in line, and it was kind of like, it only worked like, 93% of the time if they had a reason why. And it was really fascinating. So it was like, okay, well, having a reason why. And then the other thing was reciprocation, where he had another experiment where, like, an experimenter gave somebody a Coke or something inside, and then after this test that happened, then they were asked to, like, buy, like, raffle tickets or something, but they didn't know that they're going to buy raffle tickets. So they just were handing them a Coke, and it was like a higher percentage of people that bought the raffle tickets. So it's like, you can game the system, but it's not really what you want to do. You want to be, if you can go from a very authentic, genuine place. And that's why that impact part, or the mission part, is so important, because if you can get people aligned on the mission and purpose, then you don't have to game it. It's really just sharing what you're doing, and they want to be involved in it.
Mm. Oh, absolutely. And I want to double click on something there is that concept of reciprocity. And so if anybody's been in the marketing space, very familiar with that and we can see that being done in maybe like scammy ways, where somebody kind of ambushes you at the mall and like
Right.
gives you a little something like, oh, I don't want it, but you took it because you just saw it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, now they're asking for money. So
Yeah,
there's like
totally.
tried and true methods here. And I feel like there's the scammy way to do it. But there's also just the authentic way. And what I find is that I attract people who are have generosity as a core value. And so they're doing what they love, they're sharing their mission, their gift, they're giving. And so the thing that I'm always mindful of and I see is over giving or just giving from an empty cup. And so the thing that I want to highlight here, which I believe is so important, is like everybody who's watching this is a giver. Give generosity. But it's like, what channel can that loving energy flow that'll be beneficial, and circulate it so that you can give from an overflowing cup rather than some, it's like, it gives and it's lost. And I don't know if that analogy makes sense. Hopefully it does, but it's like, that's what I resonate with your approach is like, okay, if you're naturally leading with generosity, here's a little bit of technique or channel to make sure that it's a win-win-win for everybody so you can keep sharing your generosity.
Yeah, I have this one card that it's really for me too, but ask wonderfully, receive graciously. And it's an infinite loop. And the interesting thing about that, so what you said about like continually giving and giving from this empty cup is, I attract, and I'm also just naturally wired to give. And what you could do is not ask as much. And I've realized that when you don't ask, you're not giving someone else the opportunity to give. And I'm like, that's, of course, it makes total sense. And obviously, I always compare it also to breathing, right? Like, we can't only breathe in, because we're not going to survive. We have to breathe out. We have to breathe in. It's this infinite loop. And so, but allowing others to give to us is very nourishing. And, it's like that feeling that you have when you give to somebody, it's amazing. It's such a good feeling when you're able to give someone something that they're going to value, or it's going to move their mission forward, or whatever it is. So why not have that opportunity as well for other people, and make your ask something that others can contribute to.
Absolutely. I feel like that's a lesson that the people that I track to be like, we need to hear that consistently,
Right.
constantly. And as new levels of the game, we rise into, like we need to hear it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I continually, it's not like a one and done lesson for me either. It's like, oh yeah, of course. I should be asking for other things as well. And what are those direct asks and receiving, like being open to receive.
Absolutely. So this is a perfect segue into the next piece, which is how to ask. How to ask, because if somebody's ever had a scenario where you don't know how to communicate it, maybe you have the feeling that maybe the person wants to refer, but and they think, oh, I can think of so many people, but then they never do, but like how to communicate to that ask in a way that makes you not feel transactional, not feel scammy, doesn't hurt the relationship, how to ask in a way that actually benefits the relationship.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple different
Oh,
examples. Yeah.
first, before we do that, there's a little cliffhanger here. For the people watching who keep seeing these cards and they're like, what are those cards? What are those cards that they're showing? This is a referral for Yanik Silver's Cosmic Oracle cards. And these are for purpose-driven entrepreneurs, I would say, and that's why I resonate with them. And I'm going to do a little referral plug here because I absolutely love these cards. You can get them on Amazon. The link will be below this video. And they've got all these different lessons that are topics that really get the gears turning for mind, body, and spirit. I found in my experience. And for me personally, I use them for mastermind group sessions, one-on-one sessions. In the beginning of the session, I put the cards out like this, choose somebody to pick one. They pick a card for us for the entire group. And then I read that out for us. And then we comment on it for like the theme of the week. So that is my heartfelt, real referral that I use these all the time. And if anybody was curious, that's where you can get your own.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's one of my favorite, like that, and the Cosmic Journal has been two of my favorite things that I've put out into the world that feel like a full expression of who I am. And it's been just really, really fun to get them out. Um, so we're asking about how to ask. So I love So number one, directly asking is always fine, but it can feel awkward. It can feel a little bit weird. Just I'll give a super quick example, which is, I mentioned the Necker Island trip that we do. So I get an opportunity to talk to some really interesting entrepreneurs, and we curate the group there for CEOs and founders. And because I want to make sure that they're coming for the right reason. And so as we're talking, even if they're going to come or not come, I ask a really simple question. It's like, hey, who else do you know that should be here? Like, it's so easy. And then be quiet. And then, just
That's
and you'll get usually, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 7 out of 10 times I'll have one name. and maybe
7
six
out
out
of
of 10.
10.
So it's more than half, and
Oh,
they're great people, right? Because as I said, great people know other great people. So just as easy as like who else should be here, who else should be in the group, who else should, and but that it's you have to feel confident that what they're going to get is going to be a value to them. And I'm not telling them, hey, you're going to get this special deal, or you're going to get a $5,000 off now because you referred someone or whatever it is. Like people want to be of value to other people that they know, and also in this case it's a pretty unique experience, so they're getting a chance to be of value because they're sharing a unique experience that other person probably would never have known about. So that is something else to consider, is literally just asking. Um, but my favorite ways of doing it is like baking them into the process. And I call these like little I don't know, conversation catalysts or conversation crutches. And so I like creating artifacts that are created to be reminding of people of certain transformations. And Laura, you're on here. I don't know if you're still wearing this or not, but Laura went through our Thousand Suns training, and at the end of it, there's actually a bracelet that you put on, and that bracelet connects you to who are the Thousand Suns that you're lighting. What does that look like? And so it looks like this, because it's all connected to this whole story of the cosmic sloth that lives on this celestial hammock and so forth. Anyway, it makes a lot of sense when you've gone through the transformation, but it's really fun. I see people that are in that group wearing it, and it's not. We have other artifacts that I've created that are way more conversation starters, but every once in a while someone will ask what is that, or what does that mean, and then it creates an opportunity for someone to talk about it. We've done it a lot for a lot of our experiences that we do with Maverick. Is at the end of it, there's a thank you gift, and the thank you gift is something unique that they almost want to share in some way. It might be sharing it on social media. It might be um, a something that they wear that almost forces people to talk about it or ask about it. Um, there's a lot of ways that you can be doing that, where it's just like this, make it a lot easier for somebody to share a conversation.
I love this. I'm just like basking in the simplicity of the asking who else do you want to do this with. And interview you last week, Sage Polaris, conversational copywriting. She had mentioned that she uses that technique as well. And so it's so awesome to see that coming up. And for mastermind leaders, we're in the people business, we're in the communication business. So, it's just like the more referrals that we have, the stronger the ties are. So I feel like this is even more powerful for a mastermind leader, is that question of who do you want to do this with? Who should be here?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the number one questions that we always get is, for trips or experiences or retreats, is like, who else is coming, right? So if
Nice.
you're, if people are basing their decision to come be a part of the group, whatever it is, based on who's there, then doesn't it make sense to have the highest caliber people? And again, the best people know other great people. Um, so again, you can create ways of, like we talked about, the New York Times, whatever, Times Square billboard. There are referral opportunities that are incentives and things like that to get people, um, providing more reason to refer. So that's another way of doing it, like we talked about. And that doesn't it requires some money, but it doesn't require spending inordinate amounts of money to go do it. Like, you can just be creative and do something unique and experiential that they might want, that they're probably not gonna, like, the thing I always ask is like, what's something cool that someone's not going to buy for themselves or get for themselves, but they'd be like, oh, this is really interesting. And there's a site called Charity Buzz that I've talked about only in some of our private trainings, and it's a pretty good one. Some people might know about it, some people might not, but it's a spot you can go and bid on unique celebrity experiences. And so there are sometimes an opportunity, not always, but sometimes there's an opportunity. Like, I saw one that I was going to buy for Wolfgang Puck, the famous chef in
Yeah.
LA. You get like a little meet and greet with Wolfgang Puck at his restaurant. It's like for 6 or 8 people, right? So you could buy something like that, and then you could be like, all right, so now my top 6 or 7 partners that I want to engage, I would either, tell them, hey, if you sent me 3 people or whatever the case is, then you're invited to this dinner. So now you're like activating them to be a part of this thing. So just like you can be really creative about what you do and how to do it.
Oh, I love that. And I have a question for you on the artifacts slash, gifts, objects that you send to people. Because I feel like there's a graveyard somewhere for all the swag gifts that went to die, that were sent, that were bought by the business owner, all the shirts, all the pens, got to have the pens, the
Yeah.
journals, the signs, all the knickknacks, that end up not being used or not even given, and they just are unused. But that's not the case with yours. And so I'm curious, what's your approach to having those artifacts, those meaningful gifts that people love and they keep and they share and they wear?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. That is a huge one because most swag kind of things are just they're usually the material or whatever it is, like they're going for the cheapest thing, and that doesn't work. And then they're also like trying to make it all about them, all about the business. And so one other, I guess maybe secret or tip that I'll give is, so when you think about Maverick, there's a very intentional reason I chose that name, and it connects to identity, right? So somebody can say, I am a Maverick. And then there's an aspirational identity too. Like a Maverick is a trailblazer, someone that finds their own path. It's someone that's out there, a renegade, whatever it is. And so there is a really good kind of connotation around that word. And so if you're, kind of a bonus idea is, as you're thinking about your mastermind group and whatever your collective is, like what is the identity piece that they can take on? And so that's really really powerful. And so when we do gifts, like I'll share this. This is an old shirt, one of our original ones, but you notice that it only has our little hand logo. So Maverick, the A in Maverick has this little hand, and there's no big, like usually on the shoulder on the sleeve will say Maverick. So
Mm,
you notice that this is not like a big advertisement for Maverick. It's an advertisement for essentially lifestyle. It's an advertisement for what do they want to be connected to, and that's the big thing. And so my business partner Sophia Umansky, she's great at these artifacts, at the design of things, like to really get people just these unexpected bonuses, these surprise gifts. So she's incredible at this experience design, and she does events for people sometimes. So you can reach out to us if you want some help on the events and that side of things. But the t-shirts and all the stuff that we get, and I don't even like calling it swag. I mean, they're
mm.
really unique gifts and they're artifacts, and people love them because they're connected to that transformation that they had, and B, they're something that people want. So, for instance, here's one example. Um, this is kind of a unique one that came about. This is from Necker, and this was for me at sunrise before the main session started. I just wrote, like, I was feeling a little anxious about what we were doing there, and so this is what I wrote in my journal. I wrote, trust the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine. Trust the divine timing. Trust your crazy ideas. Trust your wings will grow when you leap. Trust your nature. Trust you've been encoded with a cosmic alarm clock. Trust the signs, symbols, and synchronicity sent to you. Trust the co-conspirators catalyzing your conscious evolution. Trust the perfect unfolding of your understanding, and trust your divine connections. So that was something I wrote in my journal, and that was the first time ever at that trip that I read something out of my journal. And then Sophia recognized that, and then had these plaques delivered to people after the trip, and so it was really cool. Is I went to visit one of my friends who has this huge house in LA, and he was on the trip, and on the mantle when I first walk in was that thing. And I don't think he put it on there just because I was coming to visit, but it really resonated so deeply. And so it connected to the trip that they had and the transformation and that unique experience. We also will do like jewelry and different things like that they get. Again, like hopefully creating a conversation piece in some way, shape, or form. And like Sophia's done some really great stuff where it might be sand from Necker Island that's inside a pendant or something like that, or inside a bracelet that you get. And so, these are just unique pieces that even if they don't have the conversation, it's going to have that person kind of thinking about it quite a bit. And then who knows, they might be in another group or somewhere else and they're like, oh, I've always wanted to meet Richard Branson. They're like, well, I just came from, wherever. So the more you can kind of be top of mind in that way too is really interesting.
Absolutely. Oh, okay, so I got a couple things I want to highlight there. First and foremost, we got another referral example. We need like a referral, buzzer. We got one right here. So, so wearing the shirt for Yanik's 1000 Sons Network, which is about community leaders joining together for referral partnerships and collaborations. And so I think this actually breaks the logo rule, but for good reason, because it's so cool. Like when I see this, I just love it. And it represents that quote. To me, it represents that quote that you shared. And could you say that again of,
Yeah. Well, the way the short version of it is trust the universe has even more in store for you than you can imagine.
yes. And also the 1000 Sons quote too.
Yeah. So that one is an insight that came to me about to light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. So lighting 1,000 suns who can each light another 1,000 suns.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's something powerful that I share with people as well, because everybody who finds me has community on their mind, community on their heart, and mastermind groups is like that first launching pad to follow a path that you lay out too, which is your first 10, then your first 100, and then if you want, your 1000. And so that question just resonates so deeply with all the people that I connect with. Is the way you say it, I believe, is, are you one of the 1000 sons that is here to light another 1000 sons?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so where that answer came from was using my non-dominant hand, using my left hand. And I asked my 111-year-old self, what do I need to know? And it's one of the I guess it's a technique. It's a way of really connecting deeply, because when you use your non-dominant hand, it connects your whole brain. It really goes into this deeper wisdom. And then if you're asking a certain archetype, like this 111-year-old self, I also have, in the cards, there's your 11-year-old self, and then there's the universe and some other ones. But using your 111-year-old self, it's that wise, it's seen everything. It's seen your loves, your heartbreaks, your successes, your failures. And then from that, like I would take a moment to just breathe into that space, right? Get connected. And you can meditate. You don't have to meditate, but it could be a couple minutes of just connecting to that 111-year-old self, and then using your non-dominant hand and be like, all right, well, what do I need to know? And that was what came to me. And it came to me when Maverick was kind of sideways. It was, things were going kind of in the wrong direction. It was really weird because I had 7 or 8 projects all hit the 7-figure mark before in the digital marketing space, and this was, my answer to like what would really light me up. And I'm like, all right, well, what's going on here? And originally the group was called Maverick Business Adventures, and then so that answer came to me of light 1,000 suns who each have the potential to light another 1,000 suns. It was really powerful. And then we changed the name to Maverick 1000 to represent that idea that one entrepreneur could change an industry, but 1,000 together could help change the world. And now I look at it as Maverick is one of the sons who's lighting 1,000 suns. And then there's other community leaders and others who are these sons and who are thinking about how do they bring more light into the world in their own way, and help work with visionaries and entrepreneurs and leaders and so forth. And again, when it's an interesting sort of math that happens of this leverage of 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000. So 1,000,000 suns or 1,000,000 points of light or 1,000,000 lighthouses, however you want to say it, and then their ripple of impact it gets really exciting because I can't envision myself reaching 8 billion people in the world, but I can definitely envision, reaching 1,000 who each have, 1,000 that they're lighting, and then it keeps going and keeps going from there.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's what I feel everybody, listening to this feels that pulse in their heart, feel that ripples of impact, that mission, vision, and it might be clear, it might not be clear, but that feeling of like now is the time in
Yeah.
human history where A, we need it as a country, I believe we need it.
Yeah. As a world.
So, and so does the world. And now is the time. And so I just always really appreciate your vision and way of seeing the ripples of impact. Because yeah, like one, inch, just like throwing a stone in the pond, just a little tiny boom, it ripples everywhere.
Right. Yeah, and that's where it's exciting. It's like you think about the ripples of impact that you have, and so providing that as a way of that exponential growth for what you're doing. It's exciting, and that's how you grow. And when I think of lighting suns, right, like it comes from empowering somebody else. And so it's not just maybe teaching something, but it's how are they able to be empowered to do something more than they couldn't do on their own. And
Hmm.
then also maybe that multiplication effect of can they light somebody else in some way, shape, or form. So
Right.
there's a lot of ways of thinking about it. And then also, like, I love like the Russian nesting dolls example of, like, the more your thinking increases, you basically have, you can start very small, but you keep growing and growing and growing, but it contains all those pieces within you. So as you're like I think of it as like almost like the turns on the dial for the evolutionary turns, right? So you could start with selling your time for money, then you can create a product which has higher leverage, then you can have maybe a group of people that has higher leverage in another way, and then you could be like, oh well, I'm going to help others create their own groups of people or create a platform or whatever. So you just keep leveraging up and up and up, and so you just you're a bigger and bigger universe creator in some way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people listening, you might be thinking, this sounds amazing. This is amazing. Uh, might seem like a lot to do, maybe, when you've got to do other marketing and sales type things. So one of the things that I feel like is so empowering is so powerful is like, what if all the time and energy spent in regular marketing things went into these different ways of giving love to the members and empowering them, like you said. And that was a thought that came to me, I think it was last year, where I thought, well, what if referrals was the only way? What if I could only grow my business through referrals? What time, attention, energy, love, technique would I put into it? And so that's the way I use it. That's why I'm doing. The Facebook group is grown specifically through referrals. I didn't just go through my list and, invite. A lot of people do it for groups. I was like, no, it's got to be a friend of a friend invites people. And that's how it's been. And so for everybody listening, I just want to present that option because that is what's been very powerful for me. And I'm doing it is like, okay, instead of being in a Google Doc working on the, Facebook ad or the Instagram ad or whatever, the TikTok ad, is just like focus on the referrals and the love. And so with that focus, it really freed me up to be like, okay, this isn't just another thing I got to do. It's like, no, this is the way. And it's way more fun. It's way more better. And it's like all these benefits. So I just want to speak to that. Anybody who's feeling like,
I love that.
yeah,
That brings up two things. One, back in the day, one of my favorite people that I learned from was a guy named Jay Abraham, and he was very big into referral strategies, and he had interviewed a dentist from Australia. I think his name was Paddy Lund, Paddy, Paddy Lund, and he only grew his practice via referrals. Like, it was basically like no new clients unless you've been referred. And then what was really interesting I remember about that was that he basically would show up and be like, all right, well, here's what you can expect from me, and laid out, this whole bullet point list of, standard of care and everything else, and what I'll do for you. And then what I expect from you is, I forgot what it was. It might have been two people or three people or one person. I can't remember what the expectation was, but up front, he said, this is the expectation to be a client or a patient of mine. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So I love, very, like, you can be very direct about this too. You can be like, look, and I love reason why. So going back to what we said about, the book Influence, Psychology, Persuasion, when that student experimenter added the word because, they were able to get in front of the line 93% of the time. And so having, even if there wasn't an actual reason behind it, it was just adding the word because, but I love the reason why. And the reason why is our bigger elevated mission. So now if you're like, okay, the only way that we are going to accept new members, and I'm just going to make this up,
Yeah.
is via referrals, like you said, or invitations, because other great people know great people. And we're here on a mission to do XYZ. And we can get to this mission faster with other great people that are part of the network, et cetera. So can I count on you to, to refer whatever, two people once you see that this is a benefit to you, or whatever it is. And also give that reason why, of like, I would much rather spend money by providing an amazing experience for you, and like you said, pouring love into the group, than out there spending money on advertising or marketing, or trying to bring, new clients in that way. So again, that reason why, and showing them why it makes sense, and then holding them to it. So one of the things that I love experiments, right? So I played around with this experiment maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where we put on a group. We call it the Evolve Team, and the idea was that there were going to be different people for different categories. For team stood for technology, execution, amplification, and magic. And they would form their own little groups of teams of four, and then they would expand into bigger groups of four, eventually creating a tetrahedron of 64. And so the math was really fun on it. But every meeting that we had, I would show who came from who, and then they could kind of see, oh, Harry came from Sally, and so forth. And they're like, oh, that's a really, so you could also see, like, if that person wasn't a very good member of the community, who you could blame in some way, and or more likely who you could thank, because they brought in someone amazing. And then giving them like a spot to fill in the blank, right? Like, so, like, who else do you know is, in technology or whatever, that should be a part of this. And that became easier by saying by sector, by category, by whatever it is. So that's another way of thinking about it.
Mm. Absolutely. And I want to share something that I've been rolling with that has been inspired by our talks together. And it's on that upfront expectations type communication. But yeah, I've been saying we're referral only business. So growing only through referrals, because every business has a marketing budget. And rather than putting that marketing budget into, our tech overlords' hands, I'll just say that, so I don't get a little slap on the wrist for censorship. I'm a good peasant. I'm being good. So the tech overlords, instead of sending the money their way, it's like, why not channel that money into the community, into the
Exactly. Right. Like, you have an allowable cost for acquisition, or for new
right,
member, new
right,
customer, whatever it is. Like, why not put a lot of that into providing a unique, better experience, or some of the gifts that you might provide, or some of the things that are designed to activate them as amazing referral partners. Like, there's so many ways that you can reattribute the or reallocate it.
right. And to really drive this point home, typical business, 20-30% marketing sales, easy, you
Easy,
know.
yeah.
So it's just like, okay, well, how better would your mastermind be? How better would your community be, your experience be, if like that money, went into the experience? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, and give yourself that leeway too. So that means having a little bit bigger budget margins for what you're doing, because then you can deliver that exceptional, take that piece, whatever it would be, and deliver it in other ways.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so as we round the bend here, I'll do a summary here at the end. And if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. But before I get into the summary, I'll put you on the spot here a bit. Is there an intuitive nugget or point to share here of perhaps all these, yeah, is there just, I'm going to just say that because I know you're very intuitive and I know I'm putting you on the spot. Is there any lingering, items that you wanted to share before we get into the summary?
Well, Laura pulled a card, so I saw that one, which was your words create your world, and uh, and I think, but what's interesting about that card is it's got Ganesh there up front, and Ganesh. So I'll talk about your words create your world, but really I think Ganesh is a good part of this too. But so your words, like literally the words that you use, like as you're talking to somebody, as you're listening to them, you can hear what their world is about, and so it's really that card is about like thinking about what are the words that you're using and seeing. I forgot what the prompt is. Maybe you can type it in the chat. But but Ganesh there is a really good example. I love Ganesh because Ganesh is usually known as the remover of obstacles, and but it's also the placer of obstacles. And so many times if we're not getting the results that we think we want, and there's these obstacles in front of us, there's probably a reason why. And I love connecting to that aspect of Ganesh where it's like, all right, well, if I go this way because of this obstacle, then it's moving me closer and closer to my true path and my true dharma even. And that's and when things are, and then the remover of obstacles comes in for that aspect.
Mm-hmm. And the question that's connected to that card is about the personal power phrase that you can use when you're feeling overwhelmed, scared, or uncertain about the obstacles that are.
There you go. I'd even recommend using your non-dominant hand to see if you can come
Yeah,
up with.
your personal power phrase. And yeah, because everybody listening here is aspiring to be a mastermind leader, aspiring to be a community leader, or already is one. And so leadership, we're going to hit obstacles, we're going to hit changes, we're going to hit blocks. So I really like that of with this card that Yanik has, and that's why this is so great for mastermind groups, is yeah, what is your personal power phrase when you need to lead? What is your personal power phrase when you need to lead? That'll get you into state. Of course, Tony Robbins talks about being in state. So the way I look at it is like head, heart, higher purpose, as Yanik says, boom, clicked in, you're a lead.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so now let's do a summary here. So we've covered a lot of ground. And so right off the bat with, effortless referrals and partnerships, we saw that it's not about being transactional. Sure, money is a checkbox, but it's like after, the vision, the values, the fun is flowing, and then that just makes it effortless and actually way more powerful. And we touched on Yanik's card, the win-win-win card. So win for you, win for the referral partner, win for the clients, more wins, win for the world. And going into how to, approaching it, who has more to gain by you succeeding than even you do. And so we talked about the dream team type concept of your referral partners together, and everybody has a complementary puzzle piece. Everybody has aligned values and vision, and then collaborating referrals to each other. And that way the client, the ideal client, is getting served much better because they don't have to go out into the wilderness and try and find the vendors that they want to work with, the coaches. They have the trusted group already, which even in of itself, I get the feedback is people are very appreciative to, because there's always ads in our face that make it seem like the best thing since sliced bread. But who to trust? So very valuable there. And we got into how to ask referrals in a way that makes everyone feel great. So you don't want to damage the relationship. You don't want to hurt anything. You don't want to feel awkward. So how to do that? You got your great quote of somebody joins in, and who else do you want to do this with? Who else should be here with you? And you also spoke to the gifts, the artifacts, the objects, and how to make it something that they actually like. It's empowering. It's not just about you and me and logo, it's like the logo can be there, but do it tastefully, do it small, do it, somewhere around. Shared the charity buzz, unique technique for celebrity gifts. And man, we really covered a lot of ground here. There's a lot of things. I feel like people are rewatching this one, and the 1000 Suns quote. So are you one of the 1,000 sons that are here to light another 1,000 suns? And as you shared, when we, as a candle, light another candle, we don't lose the flame. It's it expands and it only makes us brighter. And then bringing it home here with the upfront communication with the members that, hey, we're growing this mastermind, we're growing this community through referrals. We're keeping the money inside the bubble. And okay, so the one thing on this too is I was speaking with somebody yesterday who was talking about basically kind of like the sacred geometry of money circulation. And I want to hear what you think of this. And she talked about how uh, basically in certain communities, the money passes through the community 5 times before it leaves the community.
Okay.
Meaning, if you need an accountant, go from the accountant, uh, keep it within the community, and that allows it to have a certain synergy. And I've heard that the only time I'd ever heard that was through um, it was a coach teaching about like the Jewish community and then the prosperity principles and well, hey, it's like if we're friends and family and we're here, we should look to ourselves, support our fellow friends and family first before we go outside. And I feel like that principle just triggered in my mind is so powerful for mastermind community leaders is let's support each other in the bubble.
Yeah, and especially if you can make it easier for them to highlight and do business together, to see what, and there's probably got to be, we played with this before too, of like, how to police it though, because if someone has a bad experience, okay, they can have one bad experience. We kind of use the two strike methodology of like if
Mm.
someone like if there's two strikes against a service provider and a member in some way, then they're out. And because one, okay, but two, there's something going on there. And so inside that community, there's different ways of doing it, but you want to be able to highlight, or oh, I didn't know that person did that. Great, well, I could use them.
Fantastic. Awesome. So that'll bring us to a wrap here. If there's any Q&A, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, is there any lasting item message that you want to share as we close up today? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I'm buying us time here. Any closing message for the aspiring mastermind leader, aspiring community leader, people who already are one?
Not really. I think starting small is okay. Like, everyone, wants to get as big as possible, as fast as possible. And I think starting small is totally okay, because then it allows, like, that nucleus is what's going to attract in the rest of the group. So if you get that nucleus right, then you're gonna have the right people that are part of the group, because they really set a culture as well for the community. And so I think it is important, if you're thinking about it, to have an intentional culture and an intentional sort of value system. But if you don't, it's going to become via osmosis. And then who else do you want in there? Those right people that are then dictating and creating the culture that you want for the rest of the organization as it grows.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. So start with the nucleus. So that has been Effortless Referrals and Partnerships with Yanik Silver, myself, Sebastian Cruze, and that is the interview. Thank you very much for being here today.
thanks, Sebastian. Thanks, Laura.